Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing on with Punk's Not Dead by Wrunic, and we are reading Chapter 6. On Sunday afternoon, Katsuki got a text from Kirishima. Shitty hair, 1632. Hey, we were thinking about moving back into the caf tomorrow to try and bait Monoma into fucking with us again. Is that okay with you? Katsuki had to admit it wasn't a terrible idea. When he'd first had Kirishima and his friends eat in his classroom, it was to get away from Monoma and his bullshit. But since they needed new dirt on him to make any progress, going back to the cafeteria made a lot of sense. Katsuki wasn't exactly keen on leaving the relative peace of the classroom for the abject chaos of the cafeteria again, but if it meant smoking Monoma out and securing them a victory, me, 1634. Yeah, fine. Shitty hair, 1634. Cool, I'll let everyone know. Shitty hair, 1635. Oh, can you bring my hoodie back? Me, 1635. No. Shitty hair, 1636. Emoticon that's distressed and crying. Shitty hair, 1636. Why? Me, 1638. I wore it at dinner yesterday and my mom nearly burst a blood vessel. I'm not giving up something that effective at pissing her off. Kirishima's next response took a lot longer than the others. His shitty hair, 1642. I need it for work, dude. Shitty hair, 1643. If you really want one, I have others. Shitty hair, 1643. I can trade you Monday. Shitty hair, 1643. So you can keep pissing off your mom, I mean. Katsuki considered it for a moment. It wasn't weird to say yes, right? This was within the parameters of boyfriendy behavior they'd set up, even if they hadn't talked about this specifically. And the hoodie really had done an excellent job of sending his mom into a flying rage, even if he'd only worn it because he was cold and it happened to be the first sweater he'd picked up. Me, 1644. If you try and give me that MCR one, I'll kill you. Shitty hair, 1645. What if? Shitty hair, 1645. Hypothetically. Shitty hair, 1646. Fuck. Shitty hair, 1646. Hypothetically. Shitty hair, 1646. I had one in your size. Me, 1648. Still a no, asshole. Your friends are annoying enough as it is. Shitty hair, 1648. Okay, I'll figure something else out. Shitty hair, 1649. Are you chill with a non-MCR band hoodie? Because that's basically all I've got. Me, 1650. Yeah, whatever. Shitty hair, 1650. Okie dokie, see you tomorrow. Katsuki didn't bother responding, instead opting to stare at Kirishima's final text with a mixture of horror and grudging respect. Who the fuck said okie dokie in real life? Once he'd given up on trying to figure out Kirishima's weird texting lingo, Katsuki tossed his phone aside and started trying to accumulate enough laundry for a load so he could wash Kirishima's hoodie before giving it back to him, because he might have been an asshole, but he wasn't a goddamn barbarian. He managed to get enough clothes into his hamper so that it didn't look like he was only washing the sweater, then headed down to the laundry room. Katsuki made it through the entire house without incident until he opened the door to the laundry room and found his dad humming to himself as he emptied the dryer. Just his goddamn luck. Huge house with 3 fucking people in it, and yet, at least it wasn't his mother. I'll be out of your hair in a second, his dad said, giving Katsuki a small smile. Katsuki grunted and moved past him to get his load started. No reason to waste time waiting for the old man to get gone. The door to the dryer clicked shut, and Katsuki let himself believe for a second that he was home free, an illusion that lasted about half a second. Is that your boyfriend's? His dad asked, hesitantly, nodding at the hoodie. It stuck out like a sore thumb, bright red in a sea of black uniform socks. Yeah, Katsuki said, shoving it into the washer next with a bit more force than necessary. He could tell that his dad wanted to say something since he was hovering awkwardly rather than making his escape. What? Katsuki snapped, because this had already been going on for far longer than he'd wanted, and his dad wasn't going to get on with it on his own. Nothing. I'd like to meet him at some point. You don't talk about him much. There's a fucking reason for that, and she's upstairs cooking dinner, Katsuki wanted to say, but his dad knew that, seemed to expect him to say it, even if the way he was wincing was any indication. You'll meet him at the wedding, Katsuki said finally. His dad looked like he wanted to say something, then let out a soft sigh. I guess I will. He left right after, and Katsuki finished emptying his basket. Slamming the washing machine door as hard as he could helped, but not much. Time passes. Monday was fine, normal. Frog actually had the fucking audacity to voluntarily partner up with Katsuki during a group exercise, which was a position normally reserved for whatever unfortunate fuck didn't find someone to work with fast enough. It ended up being surprisingly painless, if only because she was seemingly immune to being yelled at and actually semi-competent at English. He decided by the end of the period that of all Uraraka's friends, he liked Asui best. Uraraka would be fucking unbearable about it if she found out, but it wasn't like he was going to tell her. She nearly ruined it by nodding at him as he left the classroom for the cafeteria at lunchtime. But then Four Eyes started yelling about something, and he decided she still deserved the top spot of not quite as awful as the other nerds. Kirishima was already at the lunch table when Katsuki arrived in the cafeteria. He was alone, and strangely, completely ignoring his lunch in favor of the book he was reading. That, on its own, was weird enough, but Kirishima seemed completely engrossed in the book, which wasn't something Katsuki associated with Kirishima, or any of his friends for that matter. He dropped his stuff down on the table loudly enough to break Kirishima's concentration, making him jump. Fuck, man, don't do that, he said, clutching dramatically at his chest and giving Katsuki an indignant look. Pay attention to your surroundings and I won't have to, Katsuki sniffed. What's got you so distracted anyway? Fear flashed through Kirishima's eyes, quick enough that Katsuki might have missed it if he hadn't been looking for a reaction. He said, clearly stalling while he tried to subtly move the book back into his bag without Katsuki seeing it. He failed, obviously, because Katsuki wasn't an idiot, and managed to snag the book from Kirishima's grasp before he could squirrel it away. Book 1, Endless Night, the cover page declared. This is from Winter the Nameless, Katsuki said. His voice came out sounding weird. Kirishima laughed and scratched the back of his neck, awkwardly avoiding eye contact. Yeah. Toshiko kind of forced it on me after Friday. She said she didn't want me to bore you. You know you didn't have to actually read this, right? Katsuki snorted, handing the book back to him. We're not actually dating. You don't have to worry about impressing me and shit. Kirishima laughed again, though it came out sounding a bit different, strained almost. Yeah, I know, but Toshi's going to be expecting a full book report, and I don't want to disappoint her. Katsuki shrugged. She's a kid. She'll get over it. They're sturdy little fuckers. Kirishima frowned at him. I'm not saying she's delicate, but this is something she cares about, so I'm not just going to dismiss it like it's nothing. That would be shitty. Katsuki wanted to say that no one had given a shit what he liked when he was a kid and he was fine, but he had a feeling Kirishima would get all weird and pitying if he did, so he didn't. Too much personal information at once anyway, and not any that Kirishima had to know. So instead, he just snorted dismissively and got out his lunch. The rest of the idiot squad slowly trickled in. First Ashido, wearing a neon leopard print bandana that violated, if not the dress code, then at least Katsuki's personal code of ethics. Then Sero, whose lunch seemed to consist of a giant plate of curly fries accompanied once again by a packet of soy sauce. Kaminari was the last to arrive, and he made his entrance by crashing into one end of the table at top speed because he apparently had no idea how to work his own fucking legs. There was a round of mocking applause from Ashido and Sero, but Kaminari recovered quickly, gave them a sarcastic bow, and dropped into the seat next to Kirishima. As soon as he sat down, he noticed the book on the table and pointed excitedly at it. Hey, Winter the Nameless? This was my shit in middle school. Who's reading it? Kirishima raised his hand sheepishly, and Katsuki started waging a personal internal debate about whether it was an overreaction to retroactively hate a beloved book series because a tasteless moron also happened to like it. He settled on no, only because Deku had read the series at the same time Katsuki had, and if that hadn't ruined it for him, then nothing would. Who's your favorite character? Kaminari said, jabbing a finger at Kirishima. Be warned, there are wrong answers. Dude, I started it yesterday. I've basically only met Winter. Wait, Sero said. The series is called Winter the Nameless, but one of the characters is named Winter? How does that make any sense? She doesn't have a family name, soy sauce. Katsuki snapped. Common fucking sense. Sero raised his hands in a silent surrender, and Katsuki thought that would be the end of it, but when he turned back to his food, Kaminari was looking at him with open delight on his face. The fuck are you looking at, asshole? I knew it! Kaminari crowed completely nonsensically. I knew you had to be a closet nerd. Huh? Katsuki yelled, slamming his hands down on the table and standing up to lean into Kaminari's face. Who the fuck are you calling a nerd? Clearly, Kaminari's few brain cells had finally left him, because instead of cowering in fear, he just laughed. You, dude! No one has strong opinions on the series title unless they were really obsessed at one point. Shut the fuck up, Katsuki hissed, and Kaminari just laughed harder. This was why he carefully and deliberately cultivated the impression that he didn't fucking like anything, because it left you open to this nonsense. It gave you an exploitable weakness. Kaminari shrugged, unperturbed. Not that I can judge or anything. I had a fan account. Beside him, Ashido and Sero lit up with identical looks of sadistic glee. You're kidding. Kaminari shook his head. Dead serious. 20,000 followers, and I got 3,000 yen for administration of it when I left. Oh my god, Ashido said. She sounded absolutely delighted. Denki, my dude, you do realize that's the peak of success you're going to achieve, right? Sero said. I am perfectly okay with that, Kaminari said, leaning back in his chair and opening the Tupperware containing his lunch. It was fun, and it was nice to talk to people about something I enjoyed. Katsuki thought about not reading around his mom so she wouldn't know he wasn't working on schoolwork, about laughing at Deku at school when he'd sit in a corner at recess and tear through books like his life depended on it. He felt something nudge his leg under the table, and it brought him back to the present. Kirishima was giving him an almost concerned look and holding out a bundle of black fabric. Katsuki ignored his expression, opting instead to eye the folded sweater suspiciously. He didn't think Kirishima would go against his wishes, not when he had enough embarrassing childhood stories to fucking end him at his disposal, but he made sure to unfold the hoodie so he could see what was printed on it before he accepted it. Crimson Riot? He asked, eyeing the stylized red, of course, lettering on the front of the sweater. Yeah, Kirishima said excitedly. He's the singer from the 80s, really cool guy, and I love his music. You're not one of those hipster fuckers who only listens to old music on vinyl, right? Dude, no, Kirishima laughed, and Yuka's the one who introduced me to his music. Nothing about this situation is cool. Fine, Katsuki said, accepting the hoodie and laying it down on his lap. He hadn't expected the whole sweater exchange thing to happen now, so he didn't really have anywhere else to put it. Yours is in my locker. Can we go and get it when you're done eating? I don't want to forget to go get it before work today.
Sure.
They went back to eating, and after a few seconds, he realized that the table had fallen completely silent, and he could feel 3 pairs of extremely unsubtle eyes boring into him.
What?
He snapped, shifting his attention from his food to his idiots. That was a weird-ass courting ritual, guys, Sero said, and Katsuki flipped him off.
I borrowed his work sweater and he needed it back.
Yeah, but you asked for a replacement, Ashido pointed out. Katsuki needed a response, and he knew that I wear his stuff to piss off my mom was going to get Ashido on his ass for using her friend. He racked his brain for something from one of the infinity shitty rom-coms Uraraka had forced him to watch in his life.
So, I like wearing his clothes,
Katsuki blurted, which was, what? Kirishima's face flushed so fast it completely surpassed red and went straight to purple. And Sero had to hit Ashido repeatedly on the back when she started choking violently on her rice. Kaminari, meanwhile, was looking at him with an expression that bordered on awe. Dude, he said slowly, that was the gayest thing I've ever heard. Well, at least it had been convincing. Unfortunately, Ashido's windpipe was now clear, and she seemed to be gearing up to make the rest of his lunch period absolute hell. So Katsuki, in a desperate bid to change the subject before she could act, pointed at Kirishima and said,
He jumped off a roof when he was 10.
Time passes. After the horrifically embarrassing ordeal that had been Monday, Katsuki had assumed the week could only go uphill. And he thought he was right for a while until he realized that the relative aura of chill at the lunch table on Tuesday was actually because everyone kept sending Kirishima worried looks, and Kirishima himself was picking his way silently and moping through his lunch. He kicked Kirishima in the shin.
What's with you?
Kirishima laughed a very forced laugh. Nothing. I'm fine. Just tired. Katsuki could tell that was utter bullshit, but if Kirishima wanted to talk about it, he fucking would, so Katsuki let it go and went back to his food. Kirishima's mood persisted through the rest of the period, but Katsuki figured if Kirishima wasn't making it his business, he could leave it alone. Besides, knowing him, he'd figure it out by the next day. Katsuki was, of course, wrong because the universe seemed to have decided that this month was when all the bad karma he'd accumulated throughout his life was going to come back and bite him in the ass. If anything, Kirishima looked worse than yesterday, hunched dejectedly over his food and avoiding eye contact with everyone. His spikes even looked like they were drooping. Not my problem, Katsuki told himself firmly, even though an ever-growing part of him wanted to grab Kirishima by the shoulders and shake him until he stopped looking like that. Bakugou, you're coming to the vending machines with me, Ashido chirped, standing abruptly and making her way over to Katsuki so she could smile glare at him more effectively. God, she really had to get better at subtlety if she was ever going to try and talk to him alone without immediately raising the suspicions of everyone in the area.
And why the fuck would I do that?
Because you're basically a hermit, and I think you should at least know where they are by the time we graduate, she said easily, grabbing him by the upper arm and tugging him to his feet. Let's go! He would have told her to fuck off, but if she was going to such ridiculous lengths for secrecy, she probably knew something about what was up with Kirishima. She dropped his arm as soon as they were outside the cafeteria. You gotta talk to him. Katsuki frowned at her.
Why do I have to do it? You're his friend, aren't you?
Yeah, and I tried, she said with a frustrated huff. And so did Hanta and Denki. He won't tell us anything.
I tried yesterday too, remember? Why the hell do you think it'll go different if I do it again?
She sighed and slumped a bit against the nearest wall. I don't know, boyfriend magic? Fucking seduce it out of him if you have to. I just hate seeing him like this.
And you think I don't?
Katsuki snapped defensively. Ashido rolled her eyes. Of course you don't. None of us do. It's just, A wasn't always so much of a presence, you know? When it was just us in middle school, I got used to looking out for him. And he's grown a lot since then, obviously. But he still gets in these, he still gets like this sometimes. And I feel like I can't be the one to help him because he'll feel like he's backsliding or something. She paused for a second to chew on her bottom lip, arms crossed and staring off into the distance. I think you might get through to him better than I could for this. Katsuki turned her words over in his head for a few moments, considering. He wasn't good at this sort of thing by any stretch of the imagination, but seeing Kirishima like this for the past few days had sucked. In a way he hadn't even really thought possible. Like his bad mood was dragging everyone else's down with it. And Katsuki was stuck with him for another week and a half, and his friends weren't able to do anything about it. He dug the heels of his hands into his eyes with a sigh. Fine.
Does he work today?
Nope.
I'll talk to him after school.
Ashido grinned and punched him in the shoulder. All right, that's what I'd like to hear. Now, what terrible packaged snack do you want? She asked, leading him in what he assumed was the direction of the vending machines.
Fuck all bubblegum, that shit's toxic.
Hey, surviving the vending machine food is like a UA rite of passage. I'll even pay for you. Despite his many and vocal protests, he ended up with a bag of chips, which Ashido forced him to eat at the lunch table in front of everyone. It managed to make Kirishima crack a small smile, which, for the few seconds it lasted, almost made it worth it. Time passes. Katsuki didn't exactly know where Kirishima's locker was, but given that the asshole was both tall and bright fucking red, he figured it wouldn't be too much of a challenge to track him down. He ended up being right because he was a fucking genius. But he only caught Kirishima as he was leaving his locker and had to jog a few steps to catch up with him.
Hey!
Kirishima turned around, eyes widening slightly in surprise when he saw Katsuki coming up towards him. Is something wrong? He asked. The concern in his voice was the most emotion Katsuki had heard out of him since Monday, and that was enough to fully harden Katsuki's resolve to fucking fix this.
I'm here to find out.
Katsuki replied, grabbing Kirishima by the wrist and pulling him towards the parking lot.
You're driving me home.
What? Dude, I work.
No, you don't, I asked Ashido.
Kirishima gave a frustrated huff, but allowed himself to be dragged along anyway, apparently resigned to his fate. Katsuki let the silence that had settled over them linger until they'd pulled out of the parking lot.
So,
he finally said,
what the fuck's going on with you?
Nothing.
Bullshit.
I'm serious. It's not something you have to worry about, okay? It's not going to interfere with your plans. Kirishima kept his eyes fixed on the road, jaw set and shoulders tense. Katsuki growled.
Fucking hell. I don't care if it's going to interfere or not. Your friends are worried about you, and you won't talk to any of them.
He didn't say that he was worried too. That felt like admitting too much. Kirishima let out a sound that was probably supposed to be a laugh. Damn meddlers.
Yeah, we fucking knew that. Spit it out, dipshit.
Look, it's not... Kirishima cut himself off with a frustrated sigh. They can't help, okay? And it's just going to make them upset if I tell them, so I don't want to.
They're already upset, asshole. Seeing you all mopey is weird, especially when you won't tell anyone why.
I really don't want to have this conversation right now.
Why not?
Because if we do, I'm going to start crying, and if I start crying, I'm going to crash the fucking car, Kirishima said. And now that he'd brought it up, Katsuki could hear the barely concealed tremor in his voice.
Pull over, then,
Katsuki suggested, not quite gently, but at least not as outright confrontationally as before. Kirishima sighed again, and for a second Katsuki thought he was going to refuse, maybe even kick him out of the car, but instead he pulled into the parking lot of a small convenience store and turned off the engine. Katsuki looked over at Kirishima, who was still staring straight ahead, digging his fingers so strongly into the steering wheel that his knuckles had gone white. "I'm failing math," Kirishima blurted out all at once, like the words were forcing themselves out of him. "And I can't ask Aizawa for help because he's already doing so much for me, and my friends are even worse at math than I am, and if I fail a course, I automatically don't qualify for the paramedic care program I want to apply to, and even if I manage to get up to a pass, I'll probably still fail the entrance exam, and I..." The torrent of words was cut off by a strangled sob, his grip on the steering wheel tightening even further. Well, shit. Katsuki honestly wasn't sure what he'd been expecting the problem to be. He hadn't really thought about it much beyond just making it stop. Unfortunately, this meant that he had no game plan, and a crying Kirishima he had no idea how to handle. Giving Uraraka food usually helped, but that didn't seem like it was going to work in this situation, so instead, before his brain could fully catch up, his mouth said,
"I'll tutor you."
Kirishima was so surprised, he actually stopped shaking, regaining some control of himself. "What?"
"Exactly what it fucking sounds like,"
Katsuki said, because this was working, and if it was working, then he was sticking to his guns, goddammit.
"I've helped you before, right?"
"Well, yeah. Just a bit at lunch, with everyone. I don't want to waste your time." Katsuki glared at him.
"It's important to you, so it's not wasting my time."
That made Kirishima look away for some reason. "I already owe you for the whole nearly killing you thing, and I don't..."
"Listen to me, Kirishima. You've gone above and fucking beyond what I expected this whole fake dating thing to be, okay? So we're even on that. And if I do this, I get to do extra math review, and your idiot friends stop breathing down my neck."
Katsuki said carefully, leaving out the "and you stop looking so fucking sad" that was trying to crawl its way up his throat.
"Win-win."
Kirishima was quiet for a few seconds, then asked, still somewhat uncertainly, "You sure?"
"I don't do shit I don't want to do."
And Katsuki really needed to do this, although he wasn't sure why exactly. He wasn't sure he wanted to find out.
"Tomorrow?"
"I actually do have work tomorrow," Kirishima said, smiling, and Katsuki aggressively pretended he didn't see him wiping under his eyes.
"Friday, then. And Tuesday."
"Twice a week?" Kirishima said, a hint of a whine creeping into his voice.
"Driving math through all your hair gel is going to take a lot of fucking effort, shitty hair."
All right, Kirishima relented, starting the engine and getting the car back on the road. "I'll drive you after school?" Katsuki grunted in agreement. Kirishima looked so much lighter than he had when they'd first gotten into the car. With a genuine smile on his face and some of the tension gone from his shoulders, it made a knot of worry that Katsuki hadn't even really been aware of loosen in his chest, and the victory of that fueled him for the entire ride home. All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me for Chapter 6 of Punk's Not Dead by Wrunic. I hope that you will come back and join me for the next one, which will be Chapter 7. See you next time.